What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. Eskay and Jay3 hosted a stream interview with systems designer Gavin Winters and software engineer Morgan Maddren. This stream consisted on mostly questions that were extremely hardcore in nature for the most competitive players and also the highest tier players. But first, there was some pretty cool bombs of information of things they're doing to the rank system, changes coming, and what these devs are working on. Today's video sponsor, Factor, is super easy to promote because I became a paying subscriber myself. Factor meals are delicious, quick, easy, fit with a gaming lifestyle perfectly. And I have super high standards for food. I love to cook, but I don't often have the time. As a gamer and YouTuber, I'm at the computer a lot, and takeout food has failed me one too many times. Just poke a few holes in the package, and in 2 minutes, you have a hot, tasty meal. The flavors are the selling point for me. Whatever your expectations are for prepackaged food, throw them out the window. Factor meals are always bursting with flavor and will fit whatever dietary requirements you have. I do the keto diet myself, which is why Factor is a win-win-win for me and for you too. You gotta taste it to believe it. Use my link or go to go.factor75.com and use code POGYOUROWMAR50 for 50% off your first box. It's the healthiest and tastiest fast food ever. Try it for yourself and you can be a happy customer just like me. And then also a lot of ranked matchmaking myths being either busted or confirmed in some cases from answers from the devs. One thing I think we're getting clarity on is the severity of changes from Overwatch 1 to 2 and some of the ramifications that came as a bit of a surprise, but with continuous communication with the devs, we now understand that because Overwatch 2 was on a new engine, all of the UI elements had to be redone, and so a lot of things that maybe you miss, they might have intention to make, but want to improve on and dedicate time to it when they can. The On Fire system is going to make a comeback, however, they want to design it to be a bit better because the old Overwatch 1 meter was confusing. I mean, I don't even remember ever looking at it, but the flames around your character portrait or when you press tab was certainly cool, but one of those placebo meaningless things that was like super casual, but also satisfying, but also misleading. So now on top of that, also the end of game cards in Overwatch 1, I've heard a lot of people wishing that it was back because especially as the Overwatch 2 matches end so abruptly, at least having the option to look at your card and sort of feel good about it, even if it is some meaningless accomplishment like gold objective time. It's another one of those little acknowledgements that Overwatch 1 had that the sequel doesn't, but because they designed a new engine, that was one of the UI elements they didn't carry over, mainly because by the end of Overwatch 1's life cycle, by the last couple years, most players left before that screen came up anyway. So they decided to just remove it, but now admit that maybe a better middle ground between the much longer end of match flow from Overwatch 1 and the instantaneous one in 2 can be met in between. They say they want to make the end of game cards more meaningful and permanent. A lot of players asked about the ranked icons going away because having your rank plastered onto your hero gave you a strong identification of what rank you were at, but since most of us probably wish we were at a higher rank, it also is a bit of an embarrassment maybe that now that it's gone, you focus on the gameplay instead, but not knowing the rank of your teammates especially is a bit confusing, so the devs explained a few solves for this. We know that in Season 4, you will be able to see the average rank of the entire lobby, so then because you know your own rank, you'll at least know how to orient yourself in that lobby. But remember as well, the player levels went away in Overwatch 2, and now we just have the clear-cut player portrait. I think it looks kind of clean personally. I don't even mind it in its very bare bones nature right now because I never cared so much for the player portraits to begin with. It's cool in Diablo maybe, but I don't need it in this game. However, they do want to address player progression and will use that space in the future. So I'm guessing you're going to be able to unlock different portraits, I bet. That's what they do in their other games. So either probably challenges or maybe in the battle pass or something like that. Similar to your player icon, your player portrait in some way is going to be modified, not with a level or I don't think with the rank ever again, but with something else that's coming. When asked about LFG looking for group returning, they came clean and said that LFG had a lot of disruptive behavior, which they're having in custom games right now as well. Basically a lot of degeneracy going on, and they didn't have a solution for it, so they found it easier to just not include it again. And as LFG is going to take a rebuild on its UI, it hasn't been a priority so far, so don't expect LFG coming back anytime soon. Now, for the rest of this, we're going to talk a lot about the matchmaker. They came right out and said something that I think I can highlight, where they said their main goal in Overwatch 2 was to improve queue times, which they have done. What we don't know is what they've sacrificed in order to do that. They're not really clear on that. A lot of our guess is that it's allowing matches to be wider than before, but every time they come up with examples of this, they make it seem like those are outlier cases that are against the norm. And they have, as we've covered in previous videos, explained that the new role delta system wasn't quite working correctly, and they made adjustments to it and will continue to do so, and that they sort of felt they had to toy with the matchmaker, see the results, and learn from that. And well, that kind of broke it and made it worse before they could make it better. The new thing I'm excited most about is a return and improvement to a system we had in Overwatch 1, where you used to be able to hover over your teammates' names in order to see the heroes they had with the most playtime that season. Now, at the time when that went away, the devs explained that it was due to toxicity that they were trying to avoid, because you don't want to get bullied into playing Reinhardt always. But that was back before roll queue and stuff. I mean, ancient 100 years ago at this point. But now the devs say that no, they just broke it and never fixed it when they updated the player cards or the player profiles way back then. In any case, they're interested in that idea, but instead, when they remake it this time, they want to allow you to represent yourself how you'd like. So I think what that's probably going to mean is you can display your preferred heroes and maybe even some preferred stats. So as an example, what I would like to do is, let's say if I'm a tank player, make it easy for my teammates to read that I like to play dive tanks, because maybe that can quickly cause the snowball of someone to pick Tracer, and then I go Wrecking Ball and we all decide, oh yeah, we know how to play dive, and we can quickly get to that decision without needing any communication. When that does happen in a ranked game, it seems like you roll the opposition, but sometimes players just sort of fill on what they think the team needs, as opposed to knowing at a quick glance what type of team you have. And especially if a player has a hidden profile, you don't know if that sim is a one trick with 1,000 hours or just thinks they have to play it on this map, whatever. So a customizable like mini player card for your teammates to see what heroes you prefer to play or have more time on, or whatever options they allow you to customize it. It sounds like you'll be able to, I mean, he said the words represent how you'd like to be seen. That sounds like an awesome improvement in my book. Now, for the rest of the video, we're going to talk about some rather high-level competitive discussion, like ways the matchmaker works, and some recent community topics on the matter. Been a lot of criticism over the rank inflation, where streamers and high-level players have been saying there seems like there's more grandmasters than before, and the bar of skill required to get there is lower than it was in Overwatch 1. Well, to some degree, of course that's true, because there's simply more players overall. And the devs do a good job on this interview explaining a lot of things that I feel the community should know about how ranked matchmakers are supposed to work. And a good explanation they gave is that whatever number you get is never going to be like wonderfully objective, because you as a plat player haven't beat all of the other golds in the world, however many millions of them there are. Instead, it's just a relative ranking based on who you have played. And hopefully in aggregate, as everyone plays more, the entire system gets more accurate over time. The point is, you only can beat who you get matched up against. So if you're in a region with low player numbers, play at weird times of day, popular seasons, less popular seasons, these all affect the entire player base. So while yes, in Overwatch 1, the player pool was smaller, that did make it harder to rank up, because a smaller physical number of players were in the top 1%, which is what's required for GM. Now, with a much bigger pie, well, that piece is even bigger. So more players get in. But funnily enough, the first two seasons had ranked deflation, where there wasn't enough players there. And I think we can put 2 and 2 together with this, where remember, they pretty quickly decided that they needed to put the new players super low in the MMR bracket, all the way at the bottom, in fact. They put all new players at bronze 5 to start with. So that means the system was rather bottom heavy, and realistically, someone has to rank up. Like, the quality of what you expect a given rank to perform, I think is the wrong way to think about it. Even though I sometimes get upset when players don't understand strategies or basic concepts about the game that I think you should know at a given rank, that's not what's actually required of the game. The only thing that's required is for you to win with the players you're matched up against. And so if they do the wrong thing, you might be able to do a different wrong thing and still win and not have to learn or improve, or maybe you just pick the right hero, things like that. Until we get a more competitive system, like let's say a tournament mode, which we know will come eventually to the game. I'm not holding my breath at this point because they have made it clear that that's a longer term thing. It's a bit harder to play like the super high level competitive Overwatch, and we're always at mercy of the level of the types of teammates you're going to get in your games, and that like dictates the play state quite a lot based on what they know. And keep in mind, this got significantly better over the years of time in Overwatch 1, where the player base got more hardcore and less casual. So more players knew how to do more things in the game, I feel. So yes, the fundamentals I think are way worse now in Overwatch 2. And also the game is a little bit less about fundamentals, and you can mechanically just get much higher than you would have been able to in Overwatch 1. Because you're not going up against like a double shield comp, for example, where aiming is just now removed from the game if the enemy tank line picks the right heroes. And the devs kind of explain all this a bit more as well. A question that gets asked oftentimes and is popular in the Reddit community, losers queue, where it feels like you get a streak of games that are easy to win, and then all of a sudden, because you won too much, a streak of games that are impossible to win, and you lose multiple in a row. Now, an interesting thing that the devs say, natural randomness does not appear random. Now, that's a very unintuitive thing that I forget about. But us as humans have the intuition that actual randomness is like a distributed proportion of the possibilities, like an equal mix, let's say, random. But in reality, you can flip a coin 10 times and a percentage of them will be like 100% one way or the other, as opposed to the 50-50 you thought you were flipping, right? So randomly flipping a coin, it's heads or tails. But in practice, in reality, actual randomness can result in a 50-50 to go one way 10 times in a row or many times in a row, right? And that is to say, even if the matchmaker was perfect, and they talk about this as well in matches where they think they have paired up the MMR of players perfectly, at least as perfect as they can guess, where the matchmaker is working as intended, 15% of those games are steamrolls anyway. And I think this is where like experts of the game can very easily describe this, where you look at a game like that and it's often like, well, your comp was bad against their comp, or this key player is kind of out to lunch in this matchup. Your team expected them to do a certain thing and they decided to have a completely different play style and it didn't work. And they bring up a point that I love as well, where even in the Overwatch League, you might see an upset where a lower ranked team beats a higher ranked team, but that's the reason why they play multiple maps, so that even the same team will need to replicate that multiple times. And whereas in ranked, you get a random team on a random map, it's not like you get to play that team multiple times, and maybe whatever threw you off or you did badly the first time, maybe you would adjust and win 3 in a row if you had the chance. But that's just not the ranked casual system we have, which is why I look forward to a tournament system one day, because adjusting your strategies to the players map to map is an exciting thing for me. I've done that in other games, playing like on Face It, for example, or game battles before that. It's a really fun way to play that often Overwatch matches are just too short to get to do that a lot, just by the nature of the design of the game, that you might not see the rest of the map if you mess up in the first 4 minutes and don't cap A, for example. Okay, so there isn't a forced losers queue, and a similar subject is Blizzard has a forced 50% win rate. And it's kind of an extension off this losers queue idea that if you're winning too much, they want to put you in losing matches. The funny thing about this like conspiracy theory is that a 50% win rate is what MMR or ELO systems do. Like that's the intention. So on one hand, they admit that they are not looking at your win streaks or loss streaks at all, but in that time, your MMR is changing every match. So it might feel like the games are getting harder for you. If you just played 5 games in a row, won them all, your MMR is higher. So at some point, the rubber hits the road and you're starting to get in matches where you're expected to do more, or at least the level of play is higher in them and the game's harder for you. That's a natural occurrence. Like, you can't just rank up infinitely without your skills improving, because in reality, your MMR adjusts a lot more fluidly than your real skill does, or at least like in a long-term way, right? You can have a good day or a bad day, but it takes multiple up and down sessions and learning and improvement to actually hit a new plateau. Even though you might rank up and it looks like you hit a new plateau, you as a player aren't like substantially different oftentimes. You were on a streak. Now, with all that being said, new accounts do get boosted. And then of course, whenever decay is involved on a new season, there's a period of time where your wins in both those cases are more heavily weighted to try to speed up the process of MMR shifting, but that doesn't last forever. Okay, last few things that got covered that I think were pretty interesting. They say that stacking doesn't increase your chance of winning, at least for most players. I mean, you can't even really more than duo and GM anyway. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, we've said this for a long time, and I'm surprised more players and streamers don't seem to know this, but the stacking penalties in Overwatch are hilariously harsh. First of all, you mostly play against other stacks, and stacks are more likely to smurf. So the likelihood that you're playing against someone that isn't actually at that rank, I think, is high to begin with. And then on top of that, it's just a different form of Overwatch. It's harder. Teamwork in the game is brutal. So when you put 2 pre-made teams against each other, more often than not, that's a much more difficult game. So much so that they have eased the matchmaking punishment, I like to call it, or the anti-stack rules a bit. And luckily, no one seems to really think that stacks are like an easy way to rank up or anything. Otherwise, there would be a lot of complaints about it from solo players that don't want to have that level of teamwork thrust into their face. When asked if the matchmaker takes into account one tricks at all, so for example, to minimize having the same one trick on the same team or biasing on certain maps, none of that is taken into account because it would overly complicate the system and try to make guesses on the player. And at least the dev's explanation of this is that your MMR in theory should also include your performance on all the maps, and you're supposed to kind of know when to switch your hero, but you know, players that are one tricks don't. So that means you're simply at a disadvantage on certain maps. But I think the one trick argument is that they will learn how to overcome those weaknesses to the best of their ability. That's everything for today's news roundup. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.